I've got to be reasoned and deliberate here. Greetings. Great to have you, Rush Limbaugh and the EIB Network at 800-282-2882. If we just shut up and let these people speak, we may end this whole climate change issue inside of 2 years. Just shut up. It's going to be very tough for me to do. But the thing that got my reaction here, Pelosi has created this brand new committee, a select committee to deal with climate change, and she did not put Ocasio-Cortez on it. Ocasio-Cortez has been snubbed. Ocasio-Cortez is leading this thing among the millennials and the Democrat freshmen. And Pelosi has named this new select committee, just announced, and not going to put Cortez on it. This is going to cause delectable fireworks. But let me just run through some of the things. And you all have a proper background understanding of climate change. You've been here 30-plus years. You've heard me detail everything there is about it. Some of the new proposals that they have somehow let loose, they want to rebuild every single building in America. They want to phase out air travel in 10 years. They are promising government jobs and health care for everybody, and they're suggesting that if we don't have the money for it, no big deal, just print some. There's a story in Politico today quoting Cortez is saying deficits don't mean anything. Exactly. My friends, I love this in a way because I've been theorizing lately about how telling people that we can't afford it, not a reason to do something, doesn't work anymore with these people because it doesn't matter that we don't have the money to do anything. We've got deficits, 21 trillion national debt. It's not stopping anybody from spending more, proposing to spend any more. And now they're coming out and just being honest. It doesn't matter whether we have the money or not. And if we don't, just print it. Now, out there in the millennial population, we literally have a bunch of young people who believe that the earth is not going to be habitable when they hit 65. I've tried to tell you they really believe this. You would not believe, I did a special survey after the State of the Union. Trump didn't even talk about climate change. You would not believe the number of millennial news sites and blogs that were outraged, livid. It was the number one criticism these people had, that Trump didn't mention climate change. And you could read in the stories they wrote about it that they're genuinely scared to death. It is a crime what has been done to these kids. It is literally a crime the way they have been propagandized from the moment that they started watching television, from early childhood. They literally believe this planet is under destruction as we sit here today, and that human beings in the United States of America are responsible for it, primarily Republicans, and they're calling for drastic action. And so Cortez and her band have proposed it. Rebuild every building in America. I'm not making this up. They are dead serious. Phase out air travel in the next 10 years. Lord, thank you for my enemies. These people have now proposed what they literally believe, what they think is necessary. And I find myself reacting to this much as I did reacting to things 20 years ago. So nobody is going to believe this. Nobody's going to support this. Everybody's going to see how wacko this is. Now, I've learned some people are going to support it. Some people are going to support banning air travel. Some people are going to think it's a great idea to tear down every building and rebuild every building so that it'll be economically, environmentally proper. I mean, literal impossibilities. We cannot ban air travel. The world would be brought to a screeching halt. The rest of the world isn't going to do any of this. And then you get to the printing money aspect. So the great thing here is that they are, for whatever reason, showing all of their cards, and they are demonstrating exactly what they think is necessary to save the planet. And we're all going to benefit from this expose. So I'll have more details on this, as well as Pelosi. What would you call this? I mean, this is a major slap upside the head. A brand new select committee on climate change, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will not be seated on this committee. Pelosi's appointed 3 other freshman Democrats to the panel, 8 Democrats to the new special climate change committee. Cortez is not the climate change committee. I have to tell you, I think Pelosi knows this is all a crock, but she has to. I mean, folks, this is insane. This is literally childish. This is romper room type stuff, and she's got to know this. So she has to placate these people and give them their little committee, and putting mostly freshmen on it means that she's not taking it all that seriously. So wanted to set the table with that, but I want to now pivot. And so meanwhile, here we have the left, and what are they running on? They're running on race, they're running on sex, they're running on print money, they're running on some phantom Green New Deal, while at the same time trying to hide all of their sexual abusers and blackface governors and blackface late-night comedians. There was a fabulous 180-degree turn, and it continues. Now let's move on to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. From the, let's see, this is the Politico story. The Democrat Party's base is rallying around calls for massive social welfare programs like Medicare for All, a federal jobs guarantee, and a Green New Deal, all of which would cost trillions of dollars and potentially bust the budget. Yet, a small but growing chorus of progressives say that policymakers are thinking about deficits all wrong. Deficits? They're not that big a deal. Cortez told Business Insider last month the notion that the government needn't worry about balancing its books should be a larger part of our conversation. If we run out of money, we just print some, she says. We haven't had any money for a long time, and we're not going to let that stop us. We're not going to let people use the fact that we don't have the money stop us. So now we go to the audio soundbites. This was this morning on NPR's Morning Edition. Steve Inskeep was interviewing Cortez about the Green New Deal. First question: one reason people who are politically conservative are skeptical of efforts to combat climate change is that it sounds to them like it requires massive government intervention, which they just don't like. Are you prepared to put on the table that, yes, that they are right, that what this requires is massive government intervention?
It does. Yeah, I have no problem saying that. Why? Because we have tried their approach for 40 years. For 40 years, we tried to let the private sector take care of it. They said, we got this. We can do this. The forces of the market are going to force us to innovate, except for the fact that there's a little thing in economics called externalities. And what that means is that a corporation can dump pollution in the river and they don't have to pay for it, and taxpayers have to pay for cleaning up our air, cleaning up our water, and saving the planet. And so we've already been paying the costs, except we have not been getting any of the benefit.
Well, I really do think it's a shame what our country, what our education system, what whoever's responsible for it, what they've done to these people. This woman is trying to find a charitable way. She's just an ignoramus. She doesn't know what she doesn't know, and what she does know is so cockeyed that it's difficult to deal with it with a straight face. But the problem is she's not alone. It's widespread. A whole lot of people in her generation have bought into this. Silly notion. As far as she's concerned, the United States is responsible for climate change. As far as she's concerned, climate change is real, going to destroy the planet in another 30, well, in her case, 12 years. We've got 12 years. It's absolutely absurd. The whole thing intellectually, scientifically is absurd, and yet they buy it hook, line, and sinker. And now their proposals here, which we detailed, phase out air travel in the next 10 years. Government guaranteed job for all. Rebuild every single building in the USA. None of this is practical. Now, what they're going to say, what somebody in the Democrat Party is going to say to this, hey, I don't really believe all this. This is just the starting point. You know how negotiations work. You always ask for much more than you expect to get. You always put some throwaways in there. They don't really think they're going to ban air travel, and they don't really think they're going to destroy and rebuild every building. I understand the philosophy of asking for a lot more than you think you're going to get, but I do think these are true believers. And I think she really does believe the United States is the biggest failure, when in fact, if she would tour the world and look at any socialist country or country with tyranny, dictatorship, poverty, the degree of pollution, the environmental mess, China and India, the messes they make environmentally dwarf the United States, and yet none of her proposals would have anything to do with China or the United States. It's strictly an anti-American agenda here under false premise that we are the large guilty party in polluting. But even at that pollution is destroying the planet, that climate change is, it really kind of makes me sad. What has been done to these people? They go through life scared to death every day, literally thinking that there's something they can do to control climate, and that if they don't, they're going to die before they hit 65. Next question. You're talking about things, obviously, that cost a lot of money, and you don't specify where the money's going to come from, other than saying it'll all pay for itself.
Yeah, I think the first thing that we need to do is kind of break the mistaken idea that taxes pay for 100% of government expenditure. It's just not how government expenditure works. We can recoup costs, but oftentimes you look at, for example, the GOP tax cut, which I think was an irresponsible use of government expenditure, but government projects are often financed by a combination of taxes, deficit spending, and other kinds of investments, bonds.
Bonds. She just figured out that taxes do not fully fund government. I mean, anybody that knows there's a deficit knows that. This is pointless. Now, the first thing we need to do is kind of break the mistaken idea that taxes pay for a 100% of government expenditure. Government expenditure is off the charts. There's nowhere near the tax revenue to support. It can't be with $21 trillion national debt, annual budget deficit of $400 to $800 billion. That's the problem. You can't tax your way out of fiscal irresponsibility. Of course, to these people, the answer is simply print more money. Next question. I get that, but deficit spending is borrowing money. It has to be paid back eventually, somehow, like through taxes.
Yeah, and I think that is always the crux of it. So when we decide to go into the realm of deficit spending, we have to do so responsibly. We ask, is this an investment, or is this actually going to pay for itself?
So you're saying borrow the money, make the investment, the economy will grow, we'll pay off the debt.
Absolutely, because we're creating jobs.
This woman has no idea what she just said. So he says, so you're saying borrow the money, make the investment, the economy will grow, we'll pay off the debt. Absolutely, because we're creating jobs. She just described the Trump tax cut, which in the previous bite, she tried to rip to shreds. The woman doesn't know what economic externalities are. She tried her best to use a word she thinks nobody knows. She botched that big time. She certainly does. She just doesn't know. But all of this belief system she has is predicated on a hoax. that the planet is being destroyed by the American lifestyle. American progress is destroying the climate, and she's not going to be able to breathe the air in another 12 years. As I say, folks, I'm glad that this is happening. I'm glad they are announcing their proposals. I'm glad they are coming forth with what they think has to be done in order to save the planet. High-speed rail everywhere so that we don't need air travel anymore. Rebuild every American building if you tear them down. And who knows, whatever the hell else. I got to take a brief time out. We'll do that and be back and continue right after this. An actual excerpt from the Green New Deal. And this is in relationship. I didn't mention that they also have a plan to end cow farting in 10 years. Because cow farts are methane. Methane supposedly one of the most destructive gases to the atmosphere out there. And so I have this passage from the Green New Deal. We set a goal to get to net zero rather than zero emissions. Net zero rather than zero in 10 years. Because we aren't sure that we'll be able to fully get rid of farting cows and airplanes that fast. But we think we can ramp up renewable manufacturing and power production, retrofit every building in America, build the smart grid, overhaul transportation and agriculture, plant lots of trees, and restore our ecosystem to get to net zero in 10 years. Do you remember that I shared with you the story earlier that when it gets below zero, below 32 degrees and colder, that batteries begin to lose their efficiency? And when you approach 10 degrees, 5 degrees, batteries lose as much as 40% of their fully charged power. So what's that do to the range of your car if you're driving an electric car or anything else with a battery in it that's exposed to those temperatures, the inefficiency? By the same token, in real cold weather, outside of storms, wind is not nearly sufficient to drive all the windmills. In other words, during wintertime, folks, there simply is no way that alternative or renewable energy can even come close to maintaining the power grid as we know it. Now, I can't tell you how many times since I've been doing this program, I have told people that they want to get rid of cows. That the reason they tell people not to eat McDonald's is because of cow farting, and people look at me and think that I'm making it up, that I'm just being exaggerating so as to get people's attention. Now, Rush, come on. Nobody thinks they can control cow farts, and nobody thinks that cow farts are destroying the planet. And I say, yes, you got to hear me. They do. And then I've also said, if they're serious about this, they've got to get rid of jets. They have to get rid of what they say about jet engines and what they say about pollution in the upper atmosphere. They've got to get Rush, come on. These people don't think that. And now here they are in their own words. We're not sure we'll be able to fully get rid of farting cows and airplanes in 10 years, but we think we can ramp up renewable manufacturing and power production, retrofit every building in America. And here comes Kamala Harris. Exactly what I suggested is going to happen. These Democrat presidential candidates are going to get in on this. Kamala Harris has tweeted, I am a proud co-sponsor of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ed Markey's Green New Deal. We must aggressively tackle climate change, which poses an existential threat to our nation. When you put existential in there, it means it is dire. It means it is right now. Existential is one of those words that people real into have no clue what it means. And all you have to understand, look at the word exist. Existential exists right now. An existential crisis. It's a big dressed up word that simply means it's real and it's now. It's not down the road. So here comes, I guess, what is now the front runner, Kamala Harris. I am proud to co-sponsor your effort to get rid of farting cows and airplanes in 10 years. I think some of our prayers are being answered here, folks. It may not look like it right now. And by the way, a lot more people than you think are going to be cheering this. Don't let that depress you. There's a bunch of young millennial people that think this is exactly what's necessary. You don't know how scared they are. You don't know how scared they have been made. You do not know